Hi, welcome to Papa's Workshop. In today's video, we're going to be making a clock face. It's a very special one because I'm using a Navy logo that I've used in the past, and I'm adding a star to it. And of course, I'm using a clock face that I've also used to make other clocks in the past. In addition to that, I want to go over to Google and I want to show you where you can Google the clock faces and create your own designs. So let's get started. Now this is the original design that I had cut out before. Now this is set up right now with the 1/32 inch bit, and that's why you see this line, which is the cutout, actually so small. But what I do is always set up the first work piece as a master with all the different components in there. And then I'll set up a separate work piece, and that is the one where I will actually be carving. Now, when I use the center point of my project as my XY0, this is how I position it. And that way, right there is a center point, and I'll be able to cut it as you will see in the video. And this would get carved, and then I can switch over, and I'll show you the actual clock face with the numbers, and I'll cut that as well. And I do this in separate work pieces, and that way I can control a little bit more as to what happens. And then the last final work piece is going to be the cutout. And by using the XY0 position in the center, as you see here, it's always going to be exactly in the center, and you're not going to have a mistake. And you see that this line is now thicker. That's because I have the 1/8 inch bit set up. And then the final work piece was the pocket itself. And this pocket is really dependent on the size of the works that you have. Now, the clock works you can pick up from Amazon. You can also get it from Hobby Lobby, Michael's, even Walmart. There's a lot of different places that you can pick up the clock works. But this video is not about that. But this pocket is created so that those works will be able to drop right into there, and it will work great. Now on this particular video, I had to be able to put the star in. So in this case, I did the exact same thing. This is my first work piece, and this is where it shows all of the things, all the elements. And this is where I added the star. Now one of the things that you'll notice, I did have to take the Navy logo itself, and I made it just a little bit smaller, and then I was able to add this star. I looked at this star in a number of different ways. One of the things that I wanted to be able to do is make it where it was prominent, so the star is the size that I needed to have it, and I used the app generator to be able to create the star, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And then from here, I looked at using a V-carve bit to be able to carve it, but this, where it met, did not look good. I also looked at carving this at the same depth as the logo, and it did not have the emphasis that I wanted to. So my third option was to make this cut a little bit deeper, and to me, that gave the best look. And then from there, I created the same thing as far as the additional work pieces that was necessary. Now granted, I could have used the same clock face as the first one, but I didn't. I went ahead and set it up as a separate one. And here is my Navy logo with the star in it, and you can see where this star is a little bit darker and than the actual logo, and that's where this is cutting a little bit deeper. Now as far as the cut depth, this was at 0.07 of an inch, and the star itself was cut at a 0.14. And to me, that gave me the perfect look that I was trying to create. Now, how do you create the star? I'm going to go ahead and open up a brand new workpiece, and I'm going to come over here to the app. And there is a star generator app, and it's right here. So I'm going to click on that, and then you can see you can select any number of points that you want. So this has 5 points, but let's say I wanted an 8-point star. I could do that. So you can select any number of points that you want. In my case, I needed a 5-point star. And the other thing, I wanted from this point to this point to be a straight line. And that all has to do with this inner radius. And there's a certain amount of trial and error, but you can keep increasing this until you get it to look exactly like you want. And for me, about 55 or 56 works real well. So I like that. So at 56 for that radius, that line looks to me to be perfectly straight. So then I can import that in. And at this point, I can just grab the little handle here, size it to whatever size that I needed. And in this case, I also needed to rotate it. So I just rotated it right around. And the other thing, I can go right over here to the shape, and you can see this angle. I can also highlight this and type in the 180, and that puts it exactly where it needs to be. And of course, finally, on the cut menu, you can control the depth. You can also control the depth right here. And remember, I put this at a 0.14 was the depth that I had used. So that's how simple it is to be able to create the stars. Now, where do I get my clock face? Well, if you go to Google and you click on images, and then you can type in clock face. And I'm going to do black and white. And let's take a look and see what we get. And here is a wide range of choices that you can pick from to be able to create any type of clock that you're looking for. And if you don't like these selections, we can also come up here and we can do this as clip art, and it should give us a few additional ones. And see, there's a very traditional numbers. This is the one that I had used, which was a free one to be able to use. But again, you can pick out any of these that you want. And then once you find it, let's say you wanted this one, you could highlight this, and this was a free one right here. It says free clock face template. And then all you can do is bring this over into Inkscape. Do the bit trace map, and then bring it on into Easel. You can also try using the bit trace map in Easel itself to be able to do the same thing. So this will give you a wide range of choices to be able to create any design clock face that you're looking for. So I hope this helps you a lot as far as making clocks and where to get the face from. For this project today, I'm going to be using a premium pine. And looking at this end, I see a knot, and I don't want a knot in this clock face. So let's take a look at the other end. This end's very clear, no knots, even grain, so this is the end that I want to use. Now this board is 11¼ inches wide, so I'm going to be able to cut my board off here at 11¼ so it'll be square. I'm going to make this just a little bit longer than my 11¼ Reason being is when I use the clamps, I don't want those clamps to get cut. So I'm going to make it just a little bit larger. I'm going to use the center for my center point so it will not matter. So let's take it over to the table saw now. I've got my marks made, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut my square piece of wood. And remember, I'm making it just a little bit long, so it's not quite 11¼ by 11¼ but that's okay. This is going to work out real well. Now to establish the center on this board, I just measure from corner to corner, and I'll put a mark right there in the center. and then I'll turn the T-square and do the same thing on the other side. Just line up my corners and then make my mark, and that forms my center point. And this is what I'm going to use as my X, Y, 0 position. And you can see where I made it just a little bit long, and that's plenty. That'll work just fine for the clamps, and that center point will work perfect. Now as far as this grain pattern, I'm going to go ahead and make the navy anchor be able to follow along that line. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the center point on the other side as well, because what I want to be able to do is cut out a pocket. This pocket is going to be able to accept the clockworks, and I want that directly in the center point as well. The only thing that's left is to pick out which side is going to be the best. And if I look at both sides, the grain is very even, it's very consistent. I think I'm going to choose this one. I use a lot of different hold down methods to be able to keep my projects from moving when I'm carving. And to begin with, I'm just going to use the clamps and the bump stops to be able to hold this in position, because I'm not cutting all the way through. All I'm doing is cutting out the pocket at this point. Now the first bump stop's already in place, and that kind of is an alignment point that I use for my y-axis. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to go ahead and take a couple other of my bump stops, and I'm going to use them as clamps to be able to hold it down. And I'll use another one up on the top side. Now at this point, all I'm going to do is just take my little screwdriver gun and just screw these down tight so that it'll hold this project in place. Now in my haste, I put down 3 bump stops. I did not put anything on that right side, and that was a mistake, because even though these 3 will hold it quite well, there still is opportunity for some movement, and you'll see in a moment I had to add another one. Now one of the things that you'll notice, I'm using a little screw gun by Tack Life, and that actually has made it a whole lot easier and quicker to be able to put my clamps in position. Now remember, I'm using the center point for my XY0 position. It's time to get the machine moved, and all I'm doing is just moving it over to that XY0 position, and that establishes it. Then I raise up the router, it's time to do the Z probe, and I'm ready to carve. When the machine checklist asks me to be able to set the XY0, all I have to do is click the button that is done. I don't need to move the router anymore. Now with the Z-axis done, I'm ready to be able to carve. One of the most important safety things that you can do is to be able to stay close to the machine and watch it, because this project moved, and if I wasn't nearby, it would have ruined it. And you can see the extra bump stop that I put in place. Now that the pocket is done and successfully, I can go ahead and take it off and flip it over. So I'm going to clean up a little bit, make sure that there's no sawdust that's going to be in the way, and then I'm going to flip this project over and put it down to be able to carve the other side. Now I'm using a 1/32 inch downcut bit. This is going to give me the cleanest cut and will not require any sanding at all. Now the other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to cut out the numbers first for the clock face, and then I'm going to cut out the Navy logo. Now that the project board is flipped over, I'm going to reestablish my XY0 position, and then I'm going to do the Z probe and start to carve. Now because it moved, that's the necessary step that you cannot overlook. And then once it's done, you can see the result. That's exactly on my XY0 position. So now I'm going to raise the bit, zero the Z with the Z probe for the Z axis, and I'm going to go ahead and carve out the clock face. Now I want to give you a real good close-up look. That number 8 is perfect. There is no sanding required. It is a very clean pocket, and it looks fantastic. And that's what I want, and that's the kind of results that you get by using the downcut bit. And again, this is a 1/32 downcut bit. Now this is the only 1/32 inch bit that I have, so I don't want to break it, so I'm keeping the feed rate slow. Time is really not a factor. It's more important not to break a bit. And a 1/32 inch bit will break if you're not careful. So all these numbers are turning out really good. This is fantastic. I literally will not have to do any sanding whatsoever on the face of this clock. This bit is doing great. And just to take a look at the clock itself, this looks absolutely fantastic. And just so you know, I've got the little center hole that you can drill out for whatever size that you need for the hands. Now I switched to the next workpiece, and I'm starting to actually carve out the Navy logo. I want to zoom in real close so that you can see the detail and just how good this looks. The chain has amazing detail in it. The anchor is looking fantastic. Can't get much better than this. Now, as I said earlier, I've used this logo before. And when I first started, I went to Google Images and I found this logo as a free download, and I went ahead and downloaded it, brought it into the Inkscape, saved it as a bitmap, and then brought it into Easel. And this file has worked very, very well. I like it a lot. The only thing that I needed to do was, in this case, add the star. And I added the star right in the Easel software. Now I looked at a number of different options as far as the best way to do the star, and ultimately I decided what looked best was to make the star where it was just a little bit deeper than the anchor that was around it and the numbers on the clock. And it makes it where it's emphasized, it looks good, and I think it was the best alternative. Okay, the Navy logo is now finished. I went ahead and changed out the bit. The bit now is an 1/8 inch straight bit. I'm going to use that to cut out the outside area and free this from the wood. And don't forget, I used the glue and the tape method to be able to hold this down. So there's no tabs. That will give me a very clean cutout. Now I use the Starbond CA glue, and I'll have a link in the description below should you choose to purchase it. There is a 15% discount offer code there. As this begins to do the cutout, you can see just how close that the bump stop is to the edge. And I didn't want to cut the bump stop. That's why I made this board just a little bit long. And you can see that it comes right up to the edge of the bump stop, but it's not cutting it. And that is perfect. So I have the advantage of being able to hold it down, not only with the clamps, with the glue and tape method, but I should ensure that nothing is going to be able to move. Now again, I'm taking my time. I'm not speeding this up. I think this is going at 60 inches per minute as far as the feed rate. And I'll make several passes to be able to get this cut out. The goal here is still to have a very clean cut where minimum sanding is required. Okay, it's all finished now. It's just ready to be able to move out of the way. And the first thing, let's get the router moved. Glue and tape method holds extremely well. I'm going to need to use this to be able to lift it up. There we go. Now then, if you've never used a glue and tape method, I highly recommend it because it works extremely well. And the Starbond glue, medium, is what I use, and it has not failed yet. So I want to give a good close-up now of the finished piece. I'm going to touch up the sanding just a little bit on the edge, and this will be completed. I want to thank all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for again watching and supporting me in my endeavors. And until next time, I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in whatever project that I'm doing.